Everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gina Dingman, and I'm part of Quote Wizard's agent education team. If you need to hop out, I will be sending this to you afterwards. We'll also be having our question and answers at the end. So, again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll be collecting them. Today, we're joined by Todd McLain. He is here to teach us how you can easily track the right data to make adjustments to scale your marketing. And he's also going to be, talking about AI, that mystery tool that is the hot topic button. He is an accomplished analytics and technology expert, taught build one of the largest farmers agencies in the country before he sold it in 2021 to pursue his passion for tech-driven optimization. He is the founder of Agency MVP, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with it now. And he also is starting Agency Tool Chest. So beyond his work, Todd is a father of two, and we are really, really excited to have him here today. So whenever you're ready.
Hey, thanks, Gina. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen here. So like she mentioned, my passion is data analytics. I have Asperger's, so that's just the way it is. I obsess about analytics, problem solving. How do I get the most efficient path to ROI success? And a lot of the times that I've seen over the last 15 years mentoring, coaching agents on how to scale an agency, agents tend to lean more on gut intuition versus analytics. And the main driver in that is data collection. How do I pool all the data I need in order to get the analytics output that I'm looking for? And many, especially with Allstate's probably one of the most generous carrier when it comes to allowing you to export data. You have farmers agents who can't export really critical information from their systems. I know a lot of independents use multiple tools all over the place, so there's data everywhere, and it's really hard to compile all that data into one place where you can get the analytics that you want. And that's my whole goal that I decided to build Agency Tool Chest, because trust me, you do not want to build a tech company. It is the most expensive, highest risk thing that you can do. But I wanted to find a way, how do I build a platform that can take all of these different data pieces that are, missing information, import it into a database that can make sense of it, and then give you analytics on the output that you need in order to make smart decisions. Not only with your marketing, but a big key is your staff and how your staff are working those leads, because it depends on the type of lead if they're working it properly or not. And then along with that, there's other tools that are out there that have like compensation, so you can run payroll for your team. Things like retention, you can work certain lists for retention and onboarding. So really, Agency Tool Chest is going to become an all-in-one analytics and marketing platform for your entire agency. The thing that I wanted to stress about today to help everybody get some insights is really around how do I analyze my data and work it properly. So this, there we go. The top three issues that I see and when I'm looking at agencies are one, at the staff at the lead level. And what do I mean by that? Are your staff, if you're buying Quote Wizard leads, are your staff working them fast enough? Because when Quote Wizard sells to a couple of other agents, if they're using a speed dialer and they get to them first, the likelihood that the consumer is going to answer the phone drops by almost 90% after the first minute. And that is a factor of 10, right? 90%. So you've got to make sure that one, my staff are working the leads properly. And not only that, maybe some of your staff are really good at working other types of leads, but are bad at internet leads. So do you know how they perform on the types of leads they're working so that you can train them better on a specific lead type? That's extremely important. I see all the time where some staff have amazing results at internet leads and they do terrible with like direct mail inbound calls. And that to me, just logically, that doesn't make any sense. Somebody called you and you're not doing well with those. And it has a lot to do with their pipeline and if they're following up properly and things like that. So knowing how the leads are being distributed to your team, how your team works those types of leads, and if the follow-up of them is extremely important. The other one is the lead source analytics. Are you diving deeper at the campaign level, not just the lead source level? So I see all the time on social media where agents will say, "Hey, what lead companies are working good for you?" That's the worst question I'll and I see it all the time. It's the worst question you can ask. It has nothing to do with Quote Wizard. It has everything to do with, are you competitive in a certain zip code with a certain consumer type? Like, are you targeting instead of just blanket buying? And then that goes into that third one, which is geo and target audience. Are you pinpointing who you should be looking for, where your carriers that you're quoting are competitive? And I'll show you how we look into those things. So on the staff performance side of the equation, it is, am I tracking these things at the staff individual level? And what you're looking at is one of our dashboard reports where we show the on the left side is the lead source and the sales. In the center, we're looking at quotes. How many percent of the leads turned into a quote? So how many total quotes? How many households did we quote? And then on the right-hand side, we're looking at all the financial statistics. What's my average cost per lead, my average cost per quote, cost per item, my total spend, and my real revenue that I'm generating on this. And whenever you see a staff member, like where that red arrow is, Joshua here has a $506 cost per item, and this agent spent $3,000 on their staff member versus other staff that are producing at $136 or $145 cost per item, and they're all getting the same amount of leads. So the big issue that we're looking at is I have one staff member that is blowing up my campaign. So if you knew that, you can make a couple of choices. One, you can investigate why their closing ratio is so low. Maybe it's because they're not calling the leads fast enough. That would be the first thing I look at. Is I'm giving Joshua 53 households here. Why does he have a 5% close rate where the other top three LSPs, are above average? So I would investigate speed to contact, and then I would investigate phone calls as far as maybe you're doing some call recordings, which you should be looking at call recordings often with staff that you're trying to help lift up. Just like the NFL, almost every day they're watching film. All the players are watching their film and how they're performing. There's no difference between listening to a phone call. It's basically watching film with your team. You've got to uncover, why is it costing me three times as much per item with this one staff member than the rest of the people? And then the harshest thing you can do, but it's important, is to stop distributing these leads to them. You need to put it on pause until you find out why they're not working. Because if three other LSPs or producers in your office are doing great with them, but this one other person is costing you three times as much to get less revenue, there's a problem. And the way that I like to show my staff when I ran my agency is, I'd say, we'll use Joshua here as an example. Joshua, these are the results of the other top three LSPs. They have three times less cost per item. They're generating more revenue. This is why I'm pausing these leads to you. We need to uncover why you're not having success, but others are. And it's most likely a process and a performance issue. And if you imagine then giving those $3,000 worth of leads to your top three LSPs without overwhelming them, so that's an important thing to also keep in mind. They need to be able to have time to follow up and go after people that they didn't close on the first call. It's now I can put that money towards these other LSPs that are basically almost breaking even on these leads. And so it's important that you identify performance of individuals in your office versus just getting a gut feeling. Because even though Joshua here is at a $506 cost per item, they might be performing really well on a different marketing type and look like their sales are great. And you just don't pay attention to this problem that's there because you don't know it's there. And so this is why it's important at each lead source is to uncover what is the performance of my staff at the lead source so I can investigate those three issues: process, performance, and pause, right? My three P's. So very, very important in figuring that out. The other thing that I wanted to get into about staff and marketing is I call it the kind of like the death trap. A lot of agents, when you scale your agency, you're going to get a service department, your customer service or your account managers, whatever you want to call them. But when your sales team is on the phone, and let's say you get an inbound call, and those inbound calls are typically, if you're marketing like with direct mails or live calls, are very expensive marketing sources. And so I know if you're in Colorado buying live call transfers from Quote Wizard, you're paying a petty, pretty penny for those. And you want to make sure that those calls are being converted. Well, if you're not paying careful attention, your sales team could be on the call and nobody picks up, so it rolls over to your service line. And if your service team picks up the phone and you're paying them commission, they probably will just run with it and try to quote it and sell it. But service teams are typically always on the phone with customers, right? They answer all the inbound calls on the service line. And I call it the little hidden death trap. And this is a real life example of an agency where they had three different LSPs or service people who had taken a lot of the expense of trying to work these leads on these inbound calls, and the agent had no idea this was going on. And here we have an example of over $6,000 of marketing spend that the closing ratios were, abysmal on a couple of them, where that could have been transferred to my sales team. And again, another good example where I said the agent or the staff on the previous slide, Joshua, you'll notice he's number two at the top with a $95 cost per item. So he does exceptionally well with live calls and direct mail, but he does terrible with internet leads. And so now you know the problem. And that's what I mean by breaking each staff down by each lead source type is really gives you a clear picture on how you can help or how you can distribute leads to your team to increase your ROI and your profitability on all your marketing spend. Or you can find service team members that shouldn't be taking certain types of marketing. They should be passing those on to my sales team so that they can follow up like they need to. So it's really important to break down at the staff level at your lead source to really know what's going on within your agency. Now, I want to talk about campaign level analytics, and I'm going to show you at the end of this. So all this data is inside Agency Tool Chest's database. You would import your data into our system, and we have these different dashboards that show you these things, but I'll show you how to use AI at the end of this and where you can prompt, and I'll try to give you some insights into how you could possibly take some spreadsheets that you might have and use AI to help you be a marketing analyst. So here we have a campaign level analytics on data leads. And the different campaigns that you're seeing, there's a home campaigns, and at the very bottom, they have one auto campaign going. But within your Quote Wizard account, you can create different filter sets or campaign names and buy certain types of leads. So auto shared and different filters that you can put on it. The key thing is to segment each type of lead that you're buying into a campaign. When you do that, then you can analyze how good Quote Wizard is or anyone else at buying that specific lead so that you're profitable, right? Just because a lead might have a bad cost per item. So here we have two examples of one that a campaign I would keep and another one right below it that I would cut because it's almost three times the expense. But the whole point is when you're looking at the campaign level, you know where you should cut and you know where you should increase. Even if you're not profitable, so the second one from the bottom, it has a $163 cost per item. I'm looking on the far right side of the screen, second from the bottom. just because that campaign might have a high cost per item doesn't mean that I can't figure out a way to either bid less for the lead or maybe remove an expensive filter and keep it going. So I want to emphasize that you shouldn't just turn on and turn off lead sources. You need to figure out, all right, maybe at $163 cost per item, these home leads aren't really doing it for me. Maybe I can figure out a way to get the lead a dollar cheaper and get a better ROI and just not get so much volume from that source or from that campaign, I mean. So that you want to be able to look at the data so you can say, well, its closing ratio is 11.9%, so it's not that bad of a close rate. So maybe I should bid a little less for these to get my a little better ROI. And when you have this kind of analytics at the campaign level, it really opens up your eyes on where your spend is converting to dollars. The zip code analytics, this is pretty important, right? Because underwriting for your carriers, they're going to price differently and where do they want to grow or where's the highest risk. So they're going to charge more premium for policies. Or there's one time with farmers in Florida, they just undercut the market like crazy because they wanted to have huge growth there. And obviously it screwed them over and they're no longer writing farmers paper in Florida. But being able to watch the market at the zip code level is extremely important on a monthly basis. And the reason why I say monthly, it might not change for 3 or 4 months, but big carriers, especially the top 10 carriers, they typically change rates once a year, if not once every 6 months, if you're in a high risk state where you're getting home increases or auto increases consistently. Because of those changes and how frequently they could occur throughout the year, it's really important to check your zip codes on a monthly basis. And if you're doing things like, let's say, direct mail or live calls that are expensive, you want to figure out what kind of response and close rate am I getting at the zip code level. And I've had a lot of agents who are sending out a crazy amount of direct mail where they might be sending 100,000 mail pieces a month and they don't look at this data. I saved an Allstate agent in Texas $65,000 his first year that he signed up because he had just a huge swath of zip codes that had horrible response rates. And when I say response rate, it means they got the mail piece and then they called the agent. So being able to, one, identify response rates on any kind of passive marketing system that you're using, so direct mail, live calls, is super important. Then also with your data leads, let's say Quote Wizard, you want to be able to break out your different types of leads. So your home or your auto leads. You can't see auto on this example, but on the right-hand side, it's showing you the home breakdown. So what your closing ratio is on home. And then we have the same columns off to the right. That would be auto. So if you're really competitive and have a good closing ratio in, say, a home zip code, that's where you want to focus on your home leads. And when you combine this kind of logic with the campaign level analytics, like what lead types, different home filters that I'm using, you can't get any better. That is the absolute best way that you can analyze your marketing is the campaign working with the filter sets, and is that zip code working? When you have a green light on both of those, you invest as much money as you can. Then when the marketing's coming in, you watch your staff. How is my staff performing on these leads? And then you improve your team. You train them, you watch their process, and if they're not doing that great, then you go back to the data. What's the data telling me? Is it where I'm marketing or is it a performance issue? If you only have, so for smaller agents, this is probably some of the best advice I can give you. A lot of agents that say buy a book. I never bought a book. I was one of the largest farmers agents in Texas, and I grew straight from scratch. Anytime I started a new marketing campaign, I always put myself in the trenches first because it is impossible for you to know if something's working or not if you have a small team without you involved. And you might not be the best salesperson, but if you have one or two sales producers and you're trying marketing and it's not working, you don't have a benchmark to compare it against unless you are in the trenches yourself. So I know a lot of agents don't want to be speed dialers and don't want to sell anymore, but it's super important that you put a benchmark that inside the database where you can say, it's a team, it's my one or two LSPs, sales producers that are the problem because when I tried it, I did great, right? So just as a caveat there, if you're a small team and you're trying to grow, the agent needs to get in the data in the weeds and selling themselves, or you'll never figure out if if you have the same one or two sales producers for a year and you just can't figure out why things aren't working, you're looking at the data, it's probably a staffing issue because you might not be selling yourself. So just as a FYI there. So our system looks down at the total leads that you've purchased per zip code, looks at your spend, your ROI, your revenue, and really helps you focus on, all right, I need to invest more in these zip codes and I need to cut these different zip codes. Um, and kind of a little bit more caveat here. It depends on the marketing type that you're doing. Because these two zip codes that I'm saying cut, I'm not saying cut on all marketing types. This is specific to direct mail. They have an 80% close rate in that first cut and a 66% close rate in the second. Why would I cut that for data leads? The answer is I wouldn't. I have a great close rate. The problem is the lead type that I'm marketing, which is direct mail, the consumers aren't responding and calling me. So knowing which lead types per zip code are also important to segment so that you can figure out what type of marketing do I need to do at that zip code level. The last hot topic that I wanted to go over is target audience. So who is my carrier wanting to convert as a new customer? These are just two of six data metrics that we look at in our system. We also look at home value. We look at things like age, so the consumer's age. So we want to figure out where is the hot spot for my carrier and where they're quoting. Just because your carrier comes and tells you, oh, we want the preferred customer, right? The $500,000 home, no claims, no tickets, no accidents. That's not a good answer because just because everybody wants that person, it is based on underwriting, where am I competitive so that I can take advantage of sweet spots in the market to convert at a better ROI. And so these two examples, I thought the one on the left here, which is gender, was super interesting. The male, the purple bar represents the percent of quotes that have been done. And on the right-hand side, it looks at, or the red line is the closing ratio. And I thought it was really interesting that this agency was quoting the husband as the primary most of the time, almost twice as much. But the female, if quoted as primary, had a 5% better overall closing ratio. So when I showed this data to the agent, they go, oh my gosh, we're going to make some changes and make sure that we are always quoting both. And they started to lead with the female as the primary. And that just alone gave them a couple of percent increase in their closing ratio. So it's things like this, habits that your staff might have that need to be broken because the data is telling you something different. And on the right-hand side, we have year built. A lot of homes were built in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And for some reason, this agent had a huge dip in their closing ratio between 1960 and 1979. And then they were super competitive between 1980 and almost in 2000. So if you know you're really competitive there, then what you can do is start to play with more expensive marketing types, higher conversion types. So an example, I might buy live call transfers if I'm buying home live calls between 1980 and 1999, and I might bid a little more for those lead types because I know I'm going to have a higher conversion rate because that's where my current sweet spot in the market is. And so really dialing in on where are we quoting, who are we closing is super important in the overall scheme of things to make sure that you're competitive. And then, so Kelly, we are working on the integration with agency MVP still. So if you would like to book a demo for Agency Tool Chest and see how it might help you and your agency, you can go to our website or you can scan the QR code and it will take you to a direct link to my schedule and you can schedule a one-on-one with me to get a demo of our system. Currently our system is primarily focused on data coming from Allstate agents, but we are working with integrations to make sure that we can expand that. So we have some integrations with independent agents already that we're working on, and then we're building an integration with my first platform I built, Agency MVP, and we'll be able to help agents from everywhere pretty soon. The one thing I promised everybody, especially Dina here, that I was going to help you guys look at analytics on the AI side of things and how I can help you figure out how to use AI and turn it into basically your marketing analyst. So I know I'm going to stop my share here and bring up another share. And if anybody has any questions when I'm going through my AI prompts, feel free to shoot them out. Get my AI. Gina, can you see that?
Yep, I can.
Okay, perfect. So I like to talk to my AI, but I think the big problem that a lot of people have using AI is that they overestimate how smart AI is because AI is not intelligent. Okay, artificial intelligence, no, it's not intelligent. It is a language model system. It just predicts what it should tell you. And the problem with that is the more complex of a problem, especially with marketing, can get you into the weeds and you can spend weeks trying to figure this out and just tear your hair out. So, what I wanted to do was kind of give you some insight into how I would use AI. If you had Excel spreadsheets, it's really important that you know how to talk to the AI to get it to do what you want. So if I can give you some really good advice up front, is it start by asking it that you need to build a prompt. And so I said I'm doing a prompt for a webinar training. We're doing marketing analytics. You're going to have Excel spreadsheets that has leads data. So if you went to your Quote Wizard and downloaded your leads from Quote Wizard, and then I said what would be on that, which would be consumer name, address, cost of lead, campaign, date. And then on the other sheet, if you can from your carrier export quote data and sales data, the most important thing from lead data on an Excel spreadsheet and quote and sales data on an Excel spreadsheet is a matching identifier. For example, and formatting, so the format structure, if one Excel spreadsheet uses hyphens or if it uses commas, that's a format. That causes a lot of chaos when it comes to AI. So there has to be something that says, oh, this consumer is the same one as this consumer. And you would need to tell AI, use email address, right? If both Excel spreadsheets have email address, then that's a really easy way for the system to match the data so that it can then analyze the data. So make sure that there is a unique identifier on both spreadsheets that matches the two together. And then I would tell the AI system, this is the data point or this is the column in column D with the header email address on this named Excel spreadsheet. And then on this Excel spreadsheet, I have column F says email as the header. Use those two to match the data between the two. That's the most important thing when it comes to importing two Excel spreadsheets into AI and then prompting it. So some of the things that I would do is first have the two data sets tell the AI what I'm wanting to do. And so here it is, I'm wanting to figure out which campaigns are working and which ones aren't. These are some of the examples of what it would calculate for you. And then performance insights, like the top three performing campaigns. One of the things that's missing from my prompt, if you wanted to get into it, would be like revenue. You could say on your sales Excel spreadsheet for auto policies, I make 9% of premium, right? You could build that into your prompt. Then it would know how much revenue you're going to make and create a revenue analytics. You could also prompt it to say, also look at your zip code analytics. The most important thing, I'm just going to say it again, is make sure the very first step you're doing is matching the two Excel spreadsheets where it can match the data for each consumer from the lead to the sale or for the quote. So you can build out a prompt and do it step by step so that you can then just import. I could click attach and import two Excel spreadsheets, and it would then spit out the results that I'm looking for. And there was some other cool tips that it gives you. Uh, Identifying higher lead costs if they actually perform better or not. Um, so you could then just ask the system, are there any higher cost leads that are performing better, or if cheaper leads are performing better? And this, it's a little frustrating when you get into AI and trying to figure this out. But again, just go step by step. The more complex of an open-ended question that you give it, the more hallucinations that it's going to have on the back end. And that's where you just say, let's stop this one, start. You would start a new chat and literally start over. You don't want to stay. If things get into the weeds and it gets real messy, leave that existing chat that you're in and start a new one and literally start over. And then just go step one, I want you to match these two records together. Step two, I want you to figure out what my ROI is and just keep going step by step. That's the best way to use AI in figuring out what's happening. Like it says, garbage in, garbage out. Uh, so let's get into some questions. I see it's Kelly asked if she should wait until I'm integrated with MVP. Kelly, I would say yes, just because of the data that farmers limits us to export. There's still not a good way for the database because it's missing key information from farmers that they just won't give you yet. Um, so Dixie, I am not an approved vendor with State Farm yet. Uh, State Farm's got different tiers that we have to go through in order for them to do it, but I am using a lot of the encryption and the security. It's called SOC 2 that they're going to want already. So I don't feel like it's going to be a problem to be an approved vendor. The problem with State Farm is will they do it? And so we're on a waiting list for there. Did anybody have a question on how I'm analyzing campaigns or any deeper insights that you'd like to figure out?
And I'll give people a minute. Oh, okay, yeah. We had a question about if it helped
Health.
health, and I also saw one for home and life as well.
So it can do home and life, and it can do health. The problem is the data formatting. So you just want to schedule a call with me and show me what kind of data you have, because you import your data into our system, and then it stores it and analyzes it. So as long as I have enough key information on an Excel spreadsheet that you can import, then we can analyze it.
And then I saw two more. I don't, and I think you answered them already, but just so we have them, is it integrated to MVP yet?
Oh yeah, I already answered that one.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And then did you see the one about deep lead source analytics report?
So yeah, in our platform, I'll just hop into. Uh, I have an agent that said it was okay to show data here. So in our system, it's the deep analytics is from our lead source performance table where you can get into like this is my mail company. I do a lot of mail for this agent where you can dive into the deeper data based on the lead sources that you're doing. So this is where I'm showing that deep analytics. The other way is to do it yourself, as long as you have the right Excel spreadsheets from your sources, so your lead source data, and then you can look if you can pull your quote and sales data and use AI to try to be a marketing analyst for you. And then I'll show just real quick the other aspects of that target audience that's super important is making sure I want to find, yeah, age range, for example. This agent didn't want to quote 25 to 34-year-olds. Well, the closing ratio starts falling from there. And so it's just perspective. A lot of agents have gut instincts, especially agents who aren't quoting that often anymore and they have a big sales team. Your instincts are off. Let me tell you. I have yet to find an agent who realized, oh my gosh, we're not quoting enough of a certain type of consumer, and then their sales increase because their instincts are off. They're not in the weeds as much anymore. So knowing where you're competitive and where you should be bidding for certain types of leads or marketing types is super important. And then I believe, Gina, in Quote Wizard system, they can name the different campaigns that they're buying from and change filters.
Yep.
So there's the integration that we have with Quote Wizard. Whenever you buy a lead from Quote Wizard, it automatically comes to Agency Tool Chest. So it's real-time analytics, especially at that campaign level. And then you can work with your account rep at Quote Wizard and really have a symbiotic partnership, right? Of, hey, this campaign's doing really well. Try to get me more of those, maybe bid a little bit more so I can get more volume. And then, hey, this campaign's not performing as well. I want to bid a little less from this, but I don't want to turn it off. I need to go dive deeper and maybe train some staff members, and really work together in scaling your Quote Wizard leads.
Absolutely. I did get a question to me, but it's for you, Todd.
Okay.
Um, which chat GPT do you like?
The latest version. You always want to use the most latest version. And AI is a little finicky. So with marketing analytics, I like to use ChatGPT. On the technology side, if you're ever wanting to get into more coding and things like that, we use Claude AI for our building our code base. So there's all these different AIs that are out there, but I would say for an insurance agent, currently it's ChatGPT for me. Now that doesn't mean in 6 months that's going to change, right? It could be Grok might be better at analytics, marketing analytics. It just every AI is going to start branching into a specific performance model that they want to stay on because it's too hard with language models to try to be an expert at everything. So they're all gonna start going into their own categories in the next year, I see.
Great question about being a new agent and not having any information to compare. How does this service help?
Best question.
I know that's a
So data, I like to use this phrase. Some people get offended by it. Data doesn't lie, people do. The data is the data. And if you're a new person, I don't know any Fortune 100 company that doesn't track their analytics, that doesn't watch what's working, what's not working. So it doesn't matter if you're new, if you've been around for 5 years, if you've been here for 3 decades, you need to track your analytics. And especially being a newer agent, it's critical because you're going to start spending money on marketing. And the more money you waste, the slower you're going to grow. So it doesn't matter how long you've been around. It's I need to set the best habits possible. And for any business owner, that's tracking your results. It's tracking your data to know what's working, what's not working, especially when you're hiring staff, right? If you're a new agent and you hire on a salesperson, you can compare your numbers between you and the new salesperson and you can figure out, did I make a good hire or did I make a bad hire? And so it's any business should be tracking their data like this. Billy, so our platform is a annual commitment. Usually, when an agent signs up, we import 6 months worth of data, which is, depending on the size of your agency, could be a lot of data. So we require a 1 year commitment because analyzing 6 months worth of data is very costly on our servers. So we require a 1 year commitment for that reason. Support rep who works with you, who's always available to do Zoom calls with your team, to give people training. And there's two ways data gets into our system. One is through a quick import, which would be like an export from your carrier's data system, like your quote platform. And then the other way is our goals toolbar, which is how your team uses it. They import a PDF of their quote or the application if they sold from your carrier. They would drag and drop the PDF and it pre-fills all the data for them, and they only answer two questions, which is some lead source information and a name or a phone number. They hit save and they're done. And we're tracking all the goals for your team. We're tracking the compensation. And so it really, this goals toolbar is a Chrome extension that sits at the top of their screen as a button. And that way it's on every single web page where they don't have to. I wanted to make it so they could be on their quote system and then just drag and drop a PDF, and it's the fastest data entry possible for staff. There's currently not a monthly option because of the annual commitment that we have. Amazing company. I've seen, Gina, I don't know if I can say this or not. I've seen some wrong information on social media, especially. Like some agent said Quote Wizard was not doing well for them. And they were my user, and I went in and looked at it, and the person who said it was a staff member who was their worst staff. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's not working because of people process all that. So that's why I think it's so important that you have a relationship with your account rep at Quote Wizard so that you can make it work. And then when you're using a data analytics, we can tell you why it's not working, right? And when you have that kind of relationship, it makes everything so much easier because you're no longer using bad risk. You're not just throwing money out the window hoping that it comes back to you. It's, oh, I know what the problem is. I need to fix it. And that's what makes data analytics so powerful. I have a lot of knowledge. If anybody has any questions about marketing or zip codes, team members, things like that, here to help.
I also know when you get that blank question, right? You're like, oh, I have questions, and then they're going to come later. So if you think of anything later, feel free to send them our way, and I'm happy to pass it along. I know I would say top tips for zip codes. I think that can be really hard, especially when we're talking to our clients. They're sometimes afraid to leave their zip codes to go somewhere, maybe a bit bigger. Do you have any tips or tricks for that?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem agents have with zip codes is the lead type that they're buying or that
Mm,
they're marketing to. Because you get agents who really want, let's say, passive marketing and they're doing direct mail, and maybe they're doing really good in some zip codes for direct mail, but then they go try to buy data leads, and then their data leads are not as good. And it's not a data lead problem at that point. It's more of a process problem at that point. And
mm.
without fail, what I'll see is, let's say an agent's doing a lot of direct mail and they're like, well, we need more volume. So I'm going to go over here to Gina at Quote Wizard and I'm going to buy a bunch of internet leads. Usually what I find is that the staff are either not calling fast enough because they're used to people calling them, or they're using a telemarketing company and that telemarketing company is gathering information and emailing a quote to them, and it's the process is broken. That's not how you work internet leads. Does that make sense? And so there's that's one of the main complications. And then two is overwhelming your salespeople with too many quotes, that you're overwhelming them so they're not doing follow-up like they should. And so there's a lot of issues I've seen. Um, the lead type is the most important thing I would say with zip code analytics. You want to segment them. How are we doing in these zip codes on data leads? How are we doing on these zip codes in live calls? How are we doing it with direct mail? Once you segment it, then you can do an overall. Um, but you want to be able to see the picture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because once you see the data, then you can really start to dig into the process or the people. And it doesn't take long. I know a lot of agents get overwhelmed. Like, oh my gosh, so many spreadsheets, so many, like, there's all this data everywhere. That's exactly why I built this, is once you get into the rhythm of, oh, this lead source, the ROI is dropping, then you know to go, all right, is there a team member that's, ruining my campaigns? Is it our phone system? Are we marked as spam? Is there a certain team member I need to listen to a phone call? And then at the campaign level, maybe something changed where someone's bidding up the lead like crazy, like live calls in Colorado. I keep hearing that. Is somebody might be bidding up the lead, so your costs are increasing. Well, maybe you need to try a new campaign. Maybe you need to try a new filter set. So once you see the data, it becomes really easy to know how to pivot and how to make changes. It's not overwhelming once you get used to it. It's actually a stress relief because you know what the actual problem is and you know that you need to deal with this individual problem versus just sitting there stressed out, wondering why something's not working. So you stop it and go to something else, but you have the same problem because you didn't fix the underlying problems. So that Quote Wizard's selling. So you want to make sure that you have your campaign set up in a way on Quote Wizard's site where you're segmenting filter sets for like auto. Maybe you have an auto campaign where you allow one claim, and then a different campaign where you don't allow a claim, and watch those two results. And if the one with a claim, you actually have a good closing ratio, maybe it's because you're more competitive in that zip code against the carrier they're currently with. And so you want to watch your individual campaigns at every lead company to figure out, am I buying it at a price that allows me to convert this into a good ROI?
Okay. Great questions, everybody. Great info. I was gonna say, okay, what's your overarching? You said put your shoes back in the beginning when you have all that data. What's always the first thing you do?
Well, it's always looking at our business is sales.
Okay.
You are a sales distribution business for a carrier. And so the number one thing that I can give any advice to is how am I tracking my leads that I'm spending marketing dollars on? And how are my team performing with those? And am I buying the right leads for my carrier where I'm competitive? And unfortunately, in this business, because of the problem that I described earlier, where there's data all over, or your carrier won't let you export certain things, it becomes really difficult to combine all that information so that you can then generate an analysis of it. So I need to figure out, like, if you had to hit a reset button, I need to figure out how I get these analytics because without them, you might grow, right? There's a lot of successful agents who have 10, $20 million books, but at some point you're going to hit a wall. And then is the reaction to just hire more staff, spend more money, or should the reaction be to be more profitable? Should I figure out what's working the best, put more money into that? Which staff do I need to train on certain types of leads? And how am I distributing those leads to my team? Am I round robining the leads? This is another pet peeve of mine, Gina. I
Yeah.
hate round robin. It is the worst business decision that you could ever have because business is not a utopia where everybody just gets what they want, right?
Yeah.
I would always give more leads to agents in our staff that close more and get me a better ROI. And I make sure that those people, my staff, have as much as they can handle, not more than they can handle, as much as they can handle before any lower performing staff get more leads. And because what I want to do is bring those other people up to their level. I
Yeah.
want to listen to their phone calls. I want to make sure they're following the process that we have in place. And I want to help them be more successful, but I'm not going to just keep throwing money at them and spend.
Yeah.
So that is how every agency should be built.
It's a hot take, but I I kind of like it.
It's
I'm
a
very
business.
I no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah, it's a business.
Okay. No one else has
So,
come with anything. So thank you so much. We'll get
no
your
problem.
time back.
I'll throw up my
Yeah.
so there's my QR code hearing feedback or questions and helping you guys succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for taking the time and being here today. Thank you so much, Todd. You always truly have like the best information. It's always, I feel like I learn something every single time. And I will be sending all of his info, so don't worry if you missed anything. I'll get it to you. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.